Hello and welcome to another episode of The Love of MotoGP. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, my good friend and fellow MotoGP nerd Steve. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Tim.
And today with us, we have a very special guest, Simon Patterson. How are you doing, Simon?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Thank you for giving us your time today.
You're more than welcome.
So do you just want to give our listeners a quick run through of who you are and what you do and why we're talking to you, so they don't think we're just talking to a random stranger in a van?
Let's. So I am a freelance MotoGP reporter. I work mainly for a website called The Race, which is only just launched just before Sepang tests. We're still only less than 6 weeks old. I do bits and pieces for a few others as well, but I only went freelance in January, so I'm still trying to build a market a little bit.
Okay.
Before that, I was MCN's MotoGP reporter for 4 years. Did every round, did every test, did every event, launch, opening of an envelope for years with MCN. And before that, did 4 years for them as British Superbike reporter as well.
Okay.
So nearly 10 years as a journalist, which is scary because it makes me feel old. But and I think Qatar was my 76th consecutive Grand Prix.
Wow.
So
quite impressive.
Yeah.
So you're pretty entrenched within the whole sport now.
Very much so. Very much part of the furniture in the paddock.
Awesome, good stuff. And how did you start? How did you get into this?
So I grew up in a racing family. My great uncle was a guy called Patsy O'Kane who ran a team called PJ O'Kane on the roads.
Okay.
Sponsored Robert Dunlop for most of his career.
Wow.
So I grew up around bikes, around the Northwest 200, around going to road races, and then 2003, 2004, a friend of ours from near home started racing in the support classes in the Irish roads. I started going with as something to do during school holidays. He stopped racing, but then I kept going racing for another few years with the team, who at that point had signed Guy Martin.
Okay.
So I've known Guy since way before TV and films. Then I went to university to study forensic science, which was a complete waste of 4 years of my life.
That's quite a different direction as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I realised fairly early on that I didn't want to be doing forensics. And I'd always done some photography alongside the road racing stuff.
Okay.
And I built it up then while I was at university working for a guy called Stephen Davison, who is the official photographer for the TT, for the Northwest 200, for MCN. He's sort of the top photographer in roads. And then when I left university, because I'd been working for MCN, they were hiring for a junior web producer. And I went to MCN. I spent 9 months as a junior web producer, moved over to become BSB reporter, and then, onwards and upwards from there.
Awesome. So it's just 4 years of uni of just partying, and then that's it. We'll throw that out the window. That's not important
Pretty
anymore.
much partying and working in nightclubs and working in bars to earn enough money to blow it all going to races.
Nice. Living the life.
But, that's the way to get into the paddock is building up contacts.
Yeah.
It's getting to know people and becoming, like I said, becoming part of the furniture. So it meant that by the time I went to MCN, I already knew half the BSB paddock, and it made the transition fairly straightforward then into the racing side of things.
Awesome. So it's not just the MotoGP paddock. You know people across kind of every discipline and every.
Yeah, the once I finished talking to you, I just get a message while I was driving there. The next person I need to talk to after you is John McGuinness, because the TT was cancelled yesterday. So I messaged him this morning. Can we get a reaction for the website?
Okay.
So I'm in a fairly lucky position in that I've sort of grown up almost with some of those guys because I've been going road racing so long.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So I know people in pretty much every paddock, which is quite nice.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
MotoGP world can be a little bit inside the GP bubble a little bit.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So it's nice to still have friends in Superbikes and friends in BSB. And
And is it true what everyone seems to say, that the MotoGP paddock feels very corporate as compared to like the road racing and even BSB and stuff?
It's very corporate compared to road racing, yeah. But road racing could still do with learning a couple of the corporate lessons.
Okay.
It's like, I don't think any is better than the other. They've all got things they can improve on, and they've all got strengths. And I think I tend to find the GP paddock not as corporate as some people would imagine. And I think it's maybe because when you come into it, for maybe if you go to a couple of races a year, or if you do Day of Champions at Silverstone or something like that, it can feel quite corporate. But once you're inside it, it's really just a big village of 2,500 people that travel the world together, and we eat together and drink together and fight with each other, and it's its own little world, which is great. I've got some of the best friends I've ever had are in the GP paddock, and we message every day out of the season, and so I think there is a corporate element to it, but it's certainly not what I would call the sort of redeeming feature of it.
Okay. Yeah. Everyone we speak to on like Instagram and social media always say family. No one ever says it.
Yeah.
Like the colleagues, it's always family.
We have a journalists group chat on WhatsApp, and for the last 3 days, it's just been like multinational coronavirus memes, which is nice because obviously the Italian guys and the Spanish guys are really struggling at the minute.
Yeah,
so it's nice that they're like sending videos of old ladies out singing in their balconies and people doing keepy uppy challenges and knocking over the dinner and stuff like that. It's been quite entertaining.
I did enjoy Alex Marquez's minion outfit. I thought that was cracking.
I think the question that no one has really asked yet is why Alex Marquez had a minion outfit in quarantine with him.
That is very true. Yeah, no one's gone down that road.
That thought didn't even cross my mind. I just assumed he had it laid out.
Definitely want to keep in the closet.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So with all the people and all the contacts and stuff, like, what's your most memorable interview? Like when you've been speaking to people and even before this event, I assume you've had some interesting chats with people about this coronavirus, but since before that as well.
So I've been really, really lucky over the last 3 years. There's only 2 of us have managed to get interviews with Rossi.
Okay.
And I've had 3.
Wow.
So there's myself and an Italian journalist who works for the Gazzetta dello Sport. They're a big daily sports paper, and I think between the 2 of us, we've had 1 interview a year with them, and we're the only ones, which is quite it makes you nervous sometimes. But actually, in terms of the most impactful interview I've done recently was the one that I did with Lorenzo at Sepang Test, because I've always. Jorge's a bit of a strange character. People, I think, tend to misread him. I've always had a really good relationship with him. I've never seen the sort of the arrogance or the anger or the, which a lot of people assume there is there with him because of how he comes across on TV.
Yeah.
But even given that, the guy that turned up at Sepang this year was like a completely different person. He was so relaxed. He was so friendly. And whenever we sat down to the interview, he was so candid, so honest, so open, talked about everything I wanted to talk to, didn't shy away from any questions.
Fantastic.
And it was the first interview he'd done since retirement.
Wow.
So that's a pretty standout.
Yeah, definitely.
As they go, that's a pretty standout one.
He does seem like he's changed quite a bit from, like you say, from the sort of very serious, very focused Lorenzo from his racing days to like retirement and testing, where it's just suddenly become, like you say, so relaxed, so open, and
it actually feels a little bit like it's almost like he's dropped his guard. Because that sort of relaxed, fun, friendly. I've been out a few times, sort of end of season. We always do a big party in Valencia, and when he gets a few beers in him, he is that person all the time, And we've always had quite good fun. He sort of, he's the one person that will send me like cheeky messages on Instagram or will like reply to my tweets, and so it's always been there.
Yeah.
But it's like since he's retired, he less fucks given about showing it, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's been very clear, even his social media presence since he's kind of retired, and especially since he's come back to Yamaha as well, it seems to be much more chilled. And
yeah, exactly. And then, the whole setup there at the minute with Maverick, with Fabio, with VR, it seems like a really good place to be at the minute, that team.
Yeah,
that whole Yamaha setup.
Yeah.
Petronas and factory. So,
and the Petronas squad is working very closely with the factory squad, right?
Yeah, well, yes and no. I don't know how it's going to change this year, because no one has really been in the garage. We haven't had any racing. But last year, obviously, I spent 6 months at the end of last year working with Petronas, working for the team, And there's not as much crossover as you'd think. There's a couple of engineers in blue shirts in the back of the garage, but Fabio and his guys, Frankie and his guys, they just generally tend to do their own thing, work with what they've got. Maybe part of that is because Frankie's crew chief is obviously Ramon Furcada, who is probably the most experienced Yamaha crew chief in racing. So there's a certain feeling of you can just let Ramon do what he wants. He's probably going to do it right.
Okay.
So they tend to leave them fairly, and the results show they don't really need to be interfering much, do they?
No, exactly.
They came out of the blocks and showed what they could do from the off. They were just,
Exactly.
They did look good.
Does it feel closer to you than the Tech 3 relationship did? Is it completely different?
It's completely different.
Okay.
Because for the first time now we're seeing sort of Yamaha's overall strategy includes Petronas, whereas with Tech 3 they got the 2020 bikes at the end of the year to run in 2021. They just got what was left, whereas now it feels more involved at a higher level than in the actual race teams. It just seems like the overall strategy covers everything.
Okay.
And even I've sort of seen the social media strategies and things like that. Everything's linked.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot more crossover, much like KTM and Tech 3 have.
Yeah.
Now, actually, it's similar to that.
And it seems to be the way to go, doesn't it, for the factories as well? Because we've got Pramac running like that very closely with Ducati, at least from the outside. That's what it appears. And like LCR obviously running Cal on that Honda contract.
Yes. Yeah, the Cal Repsol one is probably the closest of all, actually.
Yeah.
In terms of actual involvement in the garage level.
Okay.
And it's because Cal and Mark have quite similar riding styles.
Yeah.
So their data is directly relevant to each other.
Okay. I guess that makes a lot of sense.
I thought about that one actually, how close that could be.
No, I think Mark just manages to pull it off that extra 1% and
a little bit more.
Yeah, there is something special about him.
I think it's something very special that we're all seeing, aren't we? I'm glad to hear inside the paddock it's just as obvious as well as from outside.
Oh yeah. Like you go to debrief some days, and I've got a good relationship with Cal, and Mark will have made a big save, and you'll go to Cal's debrief, or I'll go around to the motorhome for a coffee at the end of the day, and it'll be watching it and repeat, and Mark will make his big save, and Cal will be like, how the fuck does he do that? And this is someone who's riding the same bike on the same tires on the same circuit at the same time, and even he doesn't understand it. So
some of the seeing it at home, watching on TV, some of the stuff that looks insane that he's capable of doing.
Absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely.
I guess while we're on the Marquez, I know we did send you a few questions we were going to ask, and I've really gone off track already. But I think I'm just going to keep going until you tell me to shut up at this point.
That's fine. Fine.
But how do you think that Alex is going to adapt to that bike as well? Is he?
So it's a hard one to call. I don't think that Alex. I think Alex got a lot of criticism at the start. And I don't think it was justified. The guy is double world champion.
Exactly.
There's talent. I think his problem is that he's riding the worst imaginable motorbike to be on as a rookie. And I think he's going to struggle because that's just not a bike that it's easy to ride. We've seen... Well, Franco Morbidelli is the perfect example. We know what Franco's talent level is. We saw what happened when he got in a Honda, and then we saw what happened when he got in a Yamaha. And he went from 15th to 5th.
Yeah, that's it. And I guess we saw the same thing with Miller as well, didn't we, coming on? It was the open class Honda at the time.
Yes.
The same progression.
Yeah. So I think I would like to see Alex do well, but I think he's going to struggle, and it won't be because of his own talent.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much what we said
last
podcast. We both pretty much said the same thing.
I sort of feel for him because I feel like he is without doubt one of the best riders in the world. Like you say, he's already double world champion. Like he's a bit of a slow burn compared to Mark. Like it's taking him a little bit longer, but he's always going to be compared to his brother, and we're all doing it whether we mean to or not. It's just natural, isn't it? I would have loved to have seen him jump onto like a Pramac Ducati. Yes,
that would have been interesting because it would suit the riding style. And
that is very true.
But unfortunately, that door is closed. I think.
Yes. We'll see how it goes. And is he on a 2-year deal, Alex?
No, he's only in a 1-year deal.
Okay.
because it brings them into line with everyone else.
Yeah.
There was a bit of a push to try and get everyone on 2-year deals that are ending at the same time, which is why, if you remember, Honda made a really strange announcement halfway through a race weekend last year, being like, "Oh yeah, we've extended Cal Crutchler's deal a year," and it was because he was a year out of sync.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just to keep everyone in line.
It's just to keep. Yeah, it just means that you can do all your negotiations at once.
Yeah.
I think it's fairly sensible.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of Cal, I guess with this is obviously the last year of his deal. Is there any talk that you're allowed to talk about what he's going to be doing next? Is it a wait and see what happens this year?
I think nobody knows, including Cal Crutchlow.
Fair enough.
The last conversation I had about what do you think he's going to do next year, I'm not sure. What do you think was with his wife?
Oh, okay.
So the fact that Lucy isn't 100% sure what Cal's going to do next year means that I don't think any of the rest of us are going to even hazard a guess at it. My gut feeling is that he was probably going to be starting the season in a bit of a similar situation to Valentino, where it would depend on performance.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have no idea what the performance level of the Honda is, because obviously they made their mistake with the aero. They lost all of testing.
Everyone's a bit injured.
And we just don't know where they are now. So it's going to take a couple of races, and I think that's when we'll see Cal make a decision.
Okay, and obviously this coronavirus trouble is causing more issues with, I guess, everyone's contracts. It's going to be messing up with Valentino's contract. It's going to mess up Cal's contract.
Yeah, it's just going to cause chaos, I think.
Yeah.
The longer we go without seeing people ride, the harder it becomes to decide what to do next year.
Exactly. I suppose the coronavirus does benefit some people. Like Mark's going to have time for his injury to heal up.
Yeah, Marquez. It suits Marquez. It suits Taka Nakagami.
Yeah.
Because he's recovering from the same operation, and it benefits Andrea Iannone. While we're still waiting to find out whether or not he will be allowed to ride.
We were saying, messaging the other day, where we said there's no news yet. We're just surprised nothing's come out.
The FIM works in mysterious ways. I think there is. So I need to double check. I have it on a to-do list somewhere. There is a clause in their rule book that says they have to inform within 45 days.
Right.
But I'm not sure when the 45 days started. So I need to double check and do some maths and work out. I think it might have been from the 4th of February.
Right. In
which case we're pretty much on that date. So I need to, one of the many things to try and do this week.
Long to-do list.
Exactly.
You're managing to stay busy even though there is no racing happening right now.
Yeah, I got fairly lucky in that I'd done a bit of planning for feature stuff for the next few weeks.
Okay.
And I've been able to sort of, what was going to be like 2 or 3 things a week has become 1 thing a week. And that should stretch us out over the next sort of couple of months.
Okay.
In terms of content. And then I've been trying to set up bits and pieces. I was actually planning, until Spain announced their lockdown, I was going to Andorra next week.
Oh, okay.
Because there's, I think, 7 MotoGP riders and 20 odd Moto2 and Moto3 riders live there. So I was going to go over and just do a content spree of, spending a day with everyone.
Okay.
And getting as much stuff in the bag as possible. But that's obviously been a bit waylaid now as they go into lockdown as well.
Yes, I can imagine it's becoming quite a challenge to get any in-person stuff going on right now.
The other current thing that I'm chasing is to get some time with Frankie Morbidelli to do a life behind the quarantine.
Oh, nice.
See what the story is, see how he's still managing to train. And,
okay.
Yeah.
There must be some sort of pull to Andorra. It's like Lace is always really active on social media, always posting his racing, his skiing, and everything. I didn't realise there was that many riders actually lived in Andorra.
I love it there. If I hadn't bought the van that I'm currently sitting in to try and convert it into a home for the rest of the year, my plan B was to move to Andorra. Okay. Because just the quality of life is just, I think they've got like the 2nd highest life expectancy in the world. Wow. Because everyone does sports. Everyone's out hiking and skiing and mountain biking and and the guys have made a real life for themselves there. There's a few of them sometimes gets accused of being there because it's got a nice tax rate.
I
But
remember when
whenever you
Mark
go and
moved
see,
there.
Alicia Espargaro owns 2 restaurants. Paul Espargaro owns a downhill mountain bike rental shop. Xavier Simeon owns a Belgian chocolate shop. They've all got their businesses and their interests, and so there's some of them that are very much there for life.
Okay.
They're not just there until their career ends and they stop, for tax
Yeah.
reasons. So I completely get why they like it there and
Okay.
why they sort of there's more there every year.
It's not quite like the Monaco for Formula One drivers then.
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's not. I think rental prices aren't quite the same either, which is quite nice.
That's it. I think even in MotoGP levels, the wages aren't quite as high as with Formula One either.
Well, there is that. There is that. Yeah. No, I remember someone telling me that once you start earning over €1 million a year, it becomes it's more sense to live in Monaco than Andorra.
Okay.
Because you're paying €400 rent a month and 10% tax in Andorra, and you're paying 0% tax but €4,000 a month in rent in Monaco. So it's about if you're actually doing it for tax reasons, that's the point when you sort of make the move. Because
Okay.
yeah.
Do any of the GP riders live in Monaco?
No. Oh, Bradley Smith.
Oh, okay.
Bradley Smith is there, and Eugene Laverty is there. From
Okay.
Superbikes. Yeah. So, and then we've got Fabio, who's from Nice.
Yes. Yeah.
So but lives in Andorra.
I was going to say he's pretty much Spanish though, isn't he? At this point.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
So, I guess we just mentioned Formula One, and with Formula One, with Formula E, and so many motorsport and sporting events across the world right now being cancelled across the board. Like, I know it's up in the air, and I know when we sent you these questions, it was a few days ago, so it was a bit less of a concern with coronavirus than it has become now. But what are our chances of a season, do we think? Like, what is the rumblings inside?
The mood inside the paddock now has become, who knows, wait and see.
Yeah.
I think everyone in the paddock has realised that, we're not the people that's going to answer this question now.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it's going to become, scientific question, a political question.
Yeah, there's a lot
when
going
it's
on
safe.
with
I think looking at it from like a viewer's point of view, we sat here when Qatar got cancelled at home and everyone just blew up. The whole social media thing went nuts. And now you look back on it thinking like everyone's actually affected by it personally.
Yeah.
You could understand why they've done it. You could just completely understand.
Yeah, and I think even when Qatar was being cancelled, I was thinking like this might be a slight overreaction. However, now I don't think that anymore. I think that it was probably the right decision.
Part of me thinks that. Well, I think, to be honest, both Dorna and FOM that run F1 have been quite strategic in their decision-making process, in that they have yet to cancel a race.
Yeah.
They've let local governments make all the decisions for them, which I understand completely from an insurance point of view.
Yes, certainly. I think
it's the sensible way to do it, but it doesn't make for much forward planning. Let's put it that way.
Because we've seen the calendar come out being revised over and over again over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. I think the call that F1 made, where they said in the end, we're suspending, we're postponing, we'll release a new calendar when it's fit to release one. I think that's probably the only smart move they made over the course of the debacle that was Australian Grand Prix weekend for them.
Yeah, that's been quite an interesting one. Obviously, your colleagues at the race, Ed Straw and the others,
Scott Mitchell.
I say thank you. Have been the old Autosport team, essentially.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Have been diving into that quite a lot recently.
Yes, they have.
There's been a lot of discussion about that, and it did seem to be quite the cock up, we'll say.
Yeah, it's when you're cancelling the event as fans are queuing at the door to come in, it's just, it doesn't build confidence or build loyalty, does it?
No, it certainly was not a good look for anyone involved.
No, that's it.
I didn't realise they cut it that close.
Yeah, the 2-seater car that they use for VIPs the same way as we have the 2-seater MotoGP bike. It was on track.
Really?
It was turning laps whenever they cancelled. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
They had support races running the day before as well, didn't they?
Yeah, they had. Yeah.
Yeah.
Marshall's briefing had taken place.
That's insane.
It was very late.
Yeah. Cutting it as close as you could, I think.
There's 5 lines and then there's that.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. How do you feel, like, it's getting back to the MotoGP calendar, if we do, say, stick with the calendar we've now got, the sort of proposed 8 races in 10 weeks, I think it is. That, to me, just seems insane.
Yeah, it seems insane to me as well, trust me. It's going to be damn hard work. So sometimes we complain about the amount of travel we do and all the races on social media, and you tend to inevitably get someone saying, you're doing the best job in the world, shut up. And yeah, I am, like, 100%, don't get me wrong, I love my job, I do the best job in the world, but there are different levels of comfort in the paddock when it comes to traveling, and there are different responsibilities of jobs. I travel in economy, but I stay normally in all right hotels, and if I fall asleep at my desk, I get laughed at, and someone will take a photograph and stick it on Twitter. But if you're a Moto3 mechanic traveling in economy, sharing a room with someone that snores, you do 8 races in 10 weeks, and you make a mistake in a bike.
Yeah, big consequences.
Bad things can happen. Yeah. So there's a real worry, I think, in the paddock about the amount of work that people are expected to do in a short period.
Yeah, and do you think realistically that the races as planned, if say it does go ahead with those 8 races in 10 weeks, would that be changed? Would people sit down and say, we can't do this isn't sustainable?
I think there'll be a push to do it from the paddock, but if past experience has shown us, it's that doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah, the paddock will complain, and the Safety Commission will raise the issue, no doubt, but whether or not it's listened to is another question. Because at the end of the day, there's big financial incentives and penalties.
Yeah. Indeed, right. So, and again, still sticking to the 8 races, 10 weeks, it means that I guess we'll get a lot of cold races towards the end of the year. We're going to get some damp races towards the end of the year. Is there anyone in particular?
Actually, it might be the other way around.
Okay.
From doing a little bit of research and looking around, quite worryingly in some cases, we're going to be going to Texas when it's a lot warmer.
Okay.
We're going to be going to Argentina just as they're going into summer. And we know that we've had problems in Argentina already with tires.
Yeah.
Not dealing well with insanely high temperatures. I've got a couple of sort of Twitter friends who are Argentinian journalists, and I asked them a few days ago what conditions were likely to be like in Termas in November, and one of them described it as hotter than Mercury, and one of them described it as next door to hell.
Okay.
So, we're talking like someone said that they were there a few years ago for Touring Car Race, and it was 40 degrees air temperature at 6 a.m.
Nice.
Wow. That makes Malaysia look like a nice chilled day by the pool.
Absolutely. So the consequences of that could be really interesting, especially as the tyre allocation is picked at the start of the year for every round.
That is true.
So that's for sure that's going to have to be changed.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But and then like you say, we go to Valencia and there's going to be snow on the ground.
Yeah,
make an interesting backdrop, but geez.
Yeah, because originally it was only a week later than planned, then 2 weeks later than planned. But those 2 weeks, it's already 2 weeks later than it was a few years ago.
Yeah.
So we're now essentially a full month later, with all the consequences that brings on that coast of Spain at that time of the year.
Just keep Miller away from the snowballs.
Yeah, because if there's anyone, it will be him.
I'm going to say, I can imagine Miller running around throwing the snowballs, but who would be alongside him in that battle?
Good question. Well, there's their little sort of Andorra mafia, as we call them. Him, Rins, Quadraro, Marcel Schroeder, John McPhee. They've got a little gang that sort of hang out together and train together and are quite mischievous. John was very, very proud of himself in Sepang because in Qatar, because he spent all weekend walking around the paddock with a bottle of hand sanitizer and offering it, pretended to put a little bit in his hands and then offered it to whoever was with him. Gave them a good squirt in their hands, at which point they discovered that it was lube. He was quite proud of himself for coming up with such a good practical joke.
Excellent. I enjoy that. I'm glad to hear that they all do have a personality outside of what we see a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's the ones that you least expected of that have the biggest personalities.
Definitely. It's easy to look at people from the TV screen. You see the asymmetric, just the racer, the very serious, and it's nice to sort of hear the different stories of people actually what they're like.
Yeah, that's it.
So coming back to the GP, I know we saw a lot during testing, and we saw some interesting things coming out of the Ducati camp, especially. We saw their new suspension system, which I'm going to be honest has been confusing me as I've been trying to work it out. And I was wondering if you know a lot about that and what's going on there, and whether you could explain that to us.
So I am not the most technical person, but we recorded a podcast for the race last week with Neil Spalding, who is the most technical person, which is quite useful for me because it gives me it's nice to have someone to learn off.
Yeah.
Essentially what they're doing is they've taken the whole shot device that we knew they had the last 18 months, which locks the rear wheel of the bike down when they want to start the race, and it lets them replicate that on every single corner exit.
Oh, wow.
So as they get the gas on coming out of the corner, the rear end of the bike squats down, you push a button on the handlebars and it keeps it there, which makes the bike longer. So Miller described it as it's like having launch control, traction control, anti-wheelie out of every corner.
Wow, okay.
So it's genius because you're always trying to find the balance between having a motorbike that's long and low so that it doesn't wheelie and it accelerates well, versus a bike that's short and nimble for cornering. Yeah. And what they've done is find a way to essentially give 2 in 1 by changing the characteristics of the bike as it exits the corner.
That's fascinating. And they're allowed to do this because it's rider controlled and not electronic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a switch in the handlebar that someone sent me a link to. It's £18 on eBay, taken directly from a Suntour mountain bike shop. I just modified slightly so that it's activating the cable pulls a hydraulic valve and that opens and closes the suspension.
Wow. Trust Ducati to come out with something like that, eh?
Well, yeah, part of it is very much the brain of Gigi Dall'Igna and his crazy ideas.
Yeah.
But then the other side of it as well is that it's something that they only need to have because the bike is difficult in certain areas. Mm. So it's kind of curing. It's a solution to a problem that other people don't have.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So yeah. There's a necessity to it. They're not just doing it because it gives them a tenth of an advantage over everyone else. They're doing it to try and close the gap to other people in that specific area.
Okay. So they're not having to compromise. They're not having to give away their strengths.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
But they're closing their weaknesses. Yeah.
Certainly seems like the right way to be going. But has there been a lot of people complaining about it? I know we saw a little bit on social media about it, but I guess the news, I know, buried between Iannone and between, I guess we haven't even touched on Mark's massive contract that he's signed, but there's a lot of news has been kind of going by the wayside.
Yeah, it feels that way a bit, doesn't it? It's kind of, it's always a bit of a whirlwind at the start of the year with 2 tests and a race within the period of a month. But this year has been, I think, just everything has been overshadowed by coronavirus.
Yeah,
that has become, the bigger story. It's not often that real world events affect our little bubble in the paddock. So when it does, it's made for quite an impact.
Yeah, it's been quite a shock. I think I've been sitting and waiting, and as we came into this year, I thought we'd spend a lot of the year talking about, is Valentino going to re-sign, or will Valentino end up riding for Petronas, for example? Will there be a VR46 team in? I'd love to get your opinions on those. But obviously, coronavirus has really just taken over everything.
Absolutely. Here we are with some of those questions already decided and forgotten about almost.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, Mark's contract is just, yeah, oh yeah, at this point.
Exactly, and it wasn't until I was on my way round to here to record this, to give you a call, that and it dawned on me. I was like, Mark's got another essentially 5 years at this point. He's going to be pushing 30 or over 30 actually by the time his Repsol contract's up.
Yeah, which is I think a unique deal in the history of bike racing.
Definitely.
Both in terms of length and in terms of financial reward.
My opinion, that's definitely the right move from Honda.
Oh,
locking down,
absolutely,
without doubt, keeping the. And
absolutely.
I still maintain that man can go on and eclipse Rossi's achievements and Ago's achievements, and
we definitely differ on that.
We definitely differ on that. I think he can. I really do.
Depends on your definition of achievement.
Yes, that is true. But I think we've said it before. We witnessed in a thing of greatness, and we're lucky that we're able to watch it and watch his career progress.
So I recorded a podcast earlier with Toby Moody, and we got talking about sort of similar subject. And just to throw in a controversial opinion, I did a feature last year for MCN where I looked at the history of Grand Prix racing for the 70 years. And the way it ended up being, it sort of fell into decade by decade because that was the most sensible way to do it. And then whenever I started writing it changed and it became era by era, with each era having a sort of a defining rider.
Yeah.
So Halewood and Agostini and Rossi and Doohan. And whenever you look at it historically, they get about 8 years at the top of their game.
Okay.
Even the the Valentino Rossis of the world. So Mark's had his 6.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe it's time for some new faces. Who knows what's going to happen next year?
That is quite interesting. I never thought about it down that sort of line.
No, me neither. Because looking at it now, I find it very hard to bet against anyone that isn't Marquez for the next, as long as he stays on that grid. But I guess come 2008, 2009, we were saying the same thing about Rossi.
Exactly.
That's it. Or if you look back to 2008, you could have found yourself saying a similar thing about Stoner.
Yeah.
Exactly. 99 saying it about Doohan after 5 titles.
Exactly.
It's very easy to realise that there's a bigger picture sometimes.
Yeah.
We're all guilty of it.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. And do you think Marquez's real next challenger, are they on the grid now? Are they up and coming? Are they maybe still in Moto3?
My gut feeling is that one of them is definitely Fabio Quartararo.
Okay.
I think he has what it takes. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do next year in a factory Yamaha.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anyone else in MotoGP, but there's certainly a few other people in Moto2 and Moto3. I've said for a long time, my top tip in the way up was Jorge Martin.
Okay.
And I stand by that. I think he's going to be a big star in the not too distant future. There's a few of the other guys who I think will shine a little bit as the year progresses too, and who maybe can do it. I rate Marco Bezzecchi quite highly.
Yeah.
I'm quite curious to see what he can do, especially now that he's in a bigger bike. He's a bit of a bigger guy, and last year the KTM doesn't really count. Same as for Jorge Martin.
Yeah.
And then there's like a dozen guys in Moto3 that you look at and think, yeah, you've got it.
Yeah.
You could do good things.
There's so much talent coming through the ranks now, isn't there?
Yeah, certainly.
Moto3,
Yeah.
Moto2. The future's definitely looking bright for the sport.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Especially if you're Spanish or Italian.
Yeah, that's very true.
Or Japanese, actually, whenever you look at the Moto3 grid.
Yes,
that's
very
fair.
true.
Quite well represented there.
And you mentioned obviously Quartararo and how you probably think he will be Mark's next big challenger. But it's been, I found his kind of GP career right through from his, obviously he smashed his CV, wasn't he? He came from the Junior World Championship, which he kind of tore apart, and then moved into Moto3. Kind of had a couple of standout moments, but it wasn't great from what we expected from him.
Yeah, he had a bit of a rough road. He started very strongly in Moto3, had a couple of podiums early on in his first season, and then took a big arm injury, and that kind of waylaid him for a year. He signed for a team for the second season, promising him top quality Honda machinery, and they switched to KTM the day before the first race,
That's handy.
Wow.
which screwed most of his second year.
Yeah.
And then I think there was so much pressure on him to be the big thing that we'd seen in CV that after two bad years, he kind of lost the motivation. And it took getting onto the speed up, getting into a small team. You know, he's a very family oriented guy. He's very he likes to have his people around him. He likes to have fun in the garage. He likes to be, you know, have friendly people around. And I think he found that a little bit at Speed Up.
Okay.
And has obviously managed to keep it at Petronas,
Yeah.
where he's got a really excellent team that he loves there.
Yeah. And do we feel that maybe the Yamaha, when he moves up into the full factory squad, could that change? Or do we think that Yamaha are aware of what he needs and will be bringing that environment for him?
I think Yamaha are aware.
Okay.
And we know that they're not adverse to tailoring to our riders' whims, shall we say. Yeah, there's an old Jeremy Burgess quote about if the rider wants handlebars made of gold, the rider gets handlebars made of gold. Yeah, so much of the game is psychological that if you can convince them mentally that you're backing them, they'll do whatever you want them to.
Yeah.
Same pair of socks every racing.
Yeah, it's far from the strangest superstition in the grid.
Go on then. Speaking of strangest superstitions, can you just throw a few good ones at us?
Ooh, so obviously there's the entire Valentino Rossi routine before he gets in the bike every time, which he can't not do. Trying to think what other GP ones are. I know there's lots of sort of lucky underwear and same pants every weekend and things like that. The strangest ones still that were road racing.
Okay.
There's this, yeah, the strangest one of the entire practice week of the TT. John McGuinness will walk around looking for a penny. And will eventually find a penny in the ground, give it to Becky, his wife, and she drops it down the front of his leathers before he starts every race in the grid.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. So John has a wealth of superstitions. So I remember as well one day being in the grid at the start of a TT race, and Ian Locher was riding for Paul Bird, and he dropped one of his gloves as he was putting on the other one, and Birdie's elderly mother leaned down and picked it up for him. And Paul snatched it off her and threw it back in the ground so that Ian could pick it up himself.
Wow.
So there's lots of weird. He wouldn't race in green for years, like turned down deals with people because the team colours were green because it was unlucky. Yeah, there's all sorts, but a lot of it, you know, the Rossi one I always think is a really good example of a superstition that's a superstition for a reason, because we see him get on the bike, we see him crouch down, stand up, grab his leathers. It's all to get comfortable. It's all to make sure that it sits in the right place.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of them has reason to them.
And I guess his is obviously the most visual reason as well. Not only is the camera on him the most, but it's almost like a dance, and as well as pulling his earring, and like you see it all, it's very obvious.
Exactly. Yeah. But you know, a lot of riders have OCD.
Yeah.
And there's a certain amount of it that is because, you know, there's the famous story, isn't there, about is it Bon Jovi that insisted that their rider for concerts had a bowl of M&Ms that had no brown M&Ms in it?
Oh, was it Bon Jovi? Yeah, it was someone.
It's someone, and the reason for it was because they'd had like an accident where someone hadn't followed the rider correctly, and an engineer had been killed. So it's to make sure that people read every line of the brief.
Yes, exactly.
And there's a lot of that mentality in racing, and there's a lot of superstition comes from that.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, from ensuring things that are done. Ensuring things are done the same way every time to make sure that they're done.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
fantastic. So
they're a weird breed.
They certainly are. But I think you have to be a weird breed, whether you're riding on the roads or on the track. Like I think you've got to be a weird breed to want to push two wheels to those kind of speeds. And
Absolutely.
Enjoy the rush. I mean, I don't know. Do you ride yourself at all on the?
Very slowly.
Okay, yeah, so like the rest of us.
Yeah, very slowly, and not very often, to be honest.
Okay, so I understand the thrill of riding, and I love it, but to ride like these guys do is something that I cannot even imagine.
No.
Yeah, no.
That's it.
I've done 2 terrifying laps of Silverstone and Pillion with Calcart Slow. That's enough for me, really. I'll be honest.
Oh dear.
Fantastic. I think we've been chatting to you for a while, and we know you've got another couple of hours of driving ahead of you, and you've got to get some food in, so we don't want to keep you for too long.
No worries.
So I just think, what if the season goes ahead and we do have, is it 13 rounds we need for a championship?
Yeah, we think so.
Okay.
That's an unofficial sort of deal between Dorna and FIM. We think is 13.
Okay.
Right.
So if we get, I guess another question actually coming off. If we don't get those 13 rounds, do we just run a few races that isn't a championship, or do we really not know what happens?
Who knows? That's one of the questions to be answered.
Okay.
Is it in the best interest to try and get some races done? Yeah, probably. But is it worth calling it a season if it's only a few races? Probably not.
We end up having another World Cup or something out of it.
Yeah, essentially they'll make it like a World Cup title.
Okay, fair enough. So if we do get a whole season, I think personally we can't look any past Marc Marquez for taking another championship, but do you have any other thoughts on that? Is there anyone that can challenge him realistically?
I hate to say it, but no, not really.
No.
I think if Mark turns up and does his Marc Marquez thing on a Honda that is at least competent, then it's very hard to see him being beaten. But we would have said the same thing at the start of 2017, 2018, and Dovi almost did it. We would have said the same thing at the start of 15, and Lorenzo did do it.
Yeah.
So it's racing; anything can happen.
It's fair enough.
I'm curious to see.
Yes, and there is, one last question I've got down, and that is, I think the question on a lot of people's lips, and it was the kind of question going to Valencia and stuff as well, and do you think Fabio can win a race this year, or is it going to be another year of just solid podiums until he can get off that factory machine?
No, I think it's a matter of time. I think his downfall last year in a couple of those last lap battles with Mark was experience. He just got outfoxed. So I think once he's got another half a season of experience and under his belt, whenever it comes to go into places like like the last corner at Buriram or the second last corner at Misano, he'll know what he needs to be doing there. So I think it might be a very different circumstance.
It's going to make for some interesting watching.
It's
Good races when we do get going. It's going to be cracking.
That's it. So I think with that, we'll let you get off, Simon, and let you get yourself some food in and get the rest of your journey
Perfect,
home.
guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks
for having me.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
Thanks for chatting to us. And obviously, your podcast is the race MotoGP, right?
Yeah, that's us. Another one recorded tonight with Toby that should be going online in the next few days.
Fantastic. So for our listeners out there, check that out. The knowledge, as you can probably tell, is far more insightful than our own here. It's
I don't know about that.
That's it. And obviously the website as well is the race.com with a hyphen between the and
with
race.
a hyphen between the and the race.
Fantastic. So, and
That's
one
us.
last thing, actually, I have to say, your Instagram livery tournament has been pure gold, and I've been enjoying that all the way through so far.
Thank you very much. Anything to pass the time, eh?
It's been good. I was quite disappointed to see today, actually, that the Avintia lost out to the LCR livery, or to at least the Adamitsu LCR livery.
Yeah.
That upset me slightly. I think that Avintia livery has been quite special this year.
I agree. It's good to see them up in their game a little bit on all fronts.
Yeah,
So,
certainly.
Definitely. It's definitely been a long time coming for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah. Hopefully they'll have a good year. But like I say, we'll let you go off, Simon. So thank you very much for speaking to us today.
More than welcome, guys. Thanks
Cheers,
for having me
buddy.
on
Thank you
again.
very
And
much.
yeah, hopefully it's not the last time.
No,
Yeah,
fingers
definitely.
crossed. We will certainly speak to you again soon. Hopefully the season goes ahead and we'll have a lot to talk to you about.
Here's hoping.
Okay. Cheers, mate. Have a good
Thanks,
one.
guys.
Cheers.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Simon.
So that's it. So thank you very much to Simon for that. Quite an insightful interview and a chat that is much more technical and much better than we normally deliver.
I think one person has just outstripped two completely.
That's the difference between 10 years in the paddock and a couple of years of sitting on the sofa talking MotoGP, isn't it?
I think that's just proven a point that we definitely think we know more than we.
Yes,
we
I
do.
think I certainly like to think I know more than I actually do.
Yeah. But I appreciate him coming on.
Yes,
It's been
that's great. So yeah, for our listeners out there, if you can obviously jump on and check out the FTLOMotoGP podcast. If you're into other motorsports and you don't mind my normal jabbering about Formula 1 and Formula E and the other bollocks that I spout quite regularly, you can check out the Race's other podcasts as well. They're pretty on point.
Actually, you probably fit in really well on that podcast.
They have different squads across the lot. Like I say, the race, I guess their main podcast is just the old Autosport team. Which I was very sad when I learned Ed Straw was leaving Autosport, and then I was so elated when you actually put me onto the race podcast. So I was very happy to listen to them. So.
I only stumbled across it by pure chance, chatting to Simon, and then saw the link. I was like, oh, hang on, let's give this a listen. And it's actually really good. They're so knowledgeable, insightful, and they cover a whole load of sports.
Yeah, they cover a lot, and the website's great as well. The website covers loads, so you guys can check that out. Lay your support down. But thank you all very much for listening. I don't really know what we're going to be doing while we're waiting for a season. We had some off-season plans, so I guess we'll just carry on plodding through those. Just
keep doing what we've been doing and stick with us. We're still here, like you guys. We're just waiting for updates and the season to kick off.
And if we get isolated, then I'll just stand outside Steve's door and we'll do it through a letterbox.
I think if we get isolated, mate, just move in.
Just move in. Yeah, you can put me in your shed, mate. I'll just live in your shed.
Well, actually, Enzo's bed's part of a bunk bed, so we'll just get the top put on.
Like, shut up, Enzo. I'm trying to sleep down here.
He snores, mate. You should hear it.
But all right, guys, thank you very much for listening. As usual, if you want to say anything to us, you can find us on.
We are For the Love of MotoGP on Instagram and Twitter, or you can email us at For the Love of MotoGP. Let me start that again. For the Love of MotoGP at gmail.com.
I assume you're still checking that regularly.
Yes,
cool,
I do.
I'm not, but I just leave that to you.
No, it's. I get the note. I've made sure I turned the notifications on. I checked it after the last podcast when we said.
Yeah, good shout.
We have had a few people email us. Anne was the first one with their questions.
Yeah.
So they do come through. We get the odd question, but if anyone has a review or something you want to say or suggestions on the podcast, anything we could do, let us know.
Yeah, anything you want to hear from us. We are reaching out at the moment. Obviously, we've just spoke to Simon. We're reaching out to a few other people working within the paddock. So hopefully we will... We'll try and bring you some more of these kind of interviews. I think they're very interesting. I really enjoyed that chat, and I think they're very interesting for us as well. And it's nice, like we say, to speak to people who actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah. It's easy for us to sit and watch the telly and make assumptions about what happens in paddock life,
certainly,
how the riders are. I mean, it's very asymmetrical, I guess. And then we get an insight, and you think, well, you start to learn how the riders are, and they've actually got personalities. They're not just a focused, determined rider.
Yeah.
They play jokes on each other. And we got to see a little bit of that with Callum Miller's commentary last year.
Yes,
a little bit.
True.
But it's just a snippet. It's just a little thing. There's a big difference between us sofa racers and actually being a journalist in the paddock.
Exactly. I quite enjoyed the story we just heard about the Andorra, what I'm going to name the moped crew.
The moped crew, yeah.
Yeah, all playing jokes on each other, pissing about.
It's just nice to hear about their lives, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of them are more active on social media than others.
Yeah.
But that's just how it is. But again, it's only what they want you to see. It's not there.
Exactly, because I guess you just follow them on social media. You do see more of it, don't you?
Yeah. Some post more than others.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's it. I think we'll call it a day there.
I think we will. That's quite a long podcast, actually.
Yeah, it's a decent one. I thought it was going to be much quicker with chatting with Simon, so it's worked out nicely. So
I found myself just sitting back listening to you, Charles. I was like, this is really interesting.
I think you guys are falling asleep. You're on Skype, man. He could see you. Don't do that. That's rude.
I'll probably just sit back and listen. I was like, this is really interesting. I was sitting there thinking to myself, hang on, you should say something.
Right, so we'll go now. Me and Steve are just going to witter for the next hour, I imagine. So
we'll just drop back in our usual stuff.
Yeah, we won't put you guys through that. So thank you very much for listening, guys. We will speak to you next time. Goodbye.
Take care.